In this video, we are finding the area. We will start with the area of a parallelogram. Parallelograms include squares, rectangles, a rhombus. To find the area of a parallelogram, you multiply the length times the width or base times the height. Length times width, base times height are interchangeable. Technically, we're supposed to say base times height. Base is kind of what it sits on, the base, and height has to be perpendicular height. It has to be forming a right angle to run exactly perpendicular to the base. These lines here are the slant height. They would be used for perimeter, but not for area. Area is how much space all this shaded in blue takes up. So again, the formula is base times height. So it's as simple in this one as 16 times 11. 16 times 11 gives us 136 square inches. Answers to area problems are always squared. On B, my base is 6.2, my height is 7.5. You multiply those together, your answer is 46.5 square centimeters. Let's do two of these real quick. These are pretty simple, no need to show you work, just write your answer. Try 1A. So length times width or base times height on this one would be 16 times 3, 16.3 equals 18, and our answer for area is always in square units. So in this case, 18 square miles. Let's do one more. Try 1B. For 1B, and again, I have LW and length times width. Technically, it's supposed to be BH, base times height. Doesn't really matter. Also, it sits on the base. Your base is 10.3, but if you mix up your base and height or your length and width, it does not matter because you can multiply in any order you like. Your base or length is 10.3. Your height or width is 9.7. When you multiply those together, you get your answer, which is 99.91 square meters. That is how to find the area of a parallelogram. Here we have a rectangle, which is a type of parallelogram. So to find the area of it, it's length times width or base times height. Let's pretend that our base is 5 and our height is 4. 5 times 4 tells us we have 20 square units. If all of this space in the middle is 20, and I cut it in half diagonally, then each half should be 10, which is half of that. Each half creates a triangle. So if the area for a rectangle or parallelogram is base times height, then the area for a triangle is half the base times the height. So half times base times height. Now you can multiply in any order you want, so I would like to say half of 4 is 2, and 2 times 5 is 10 units squared, or inches squared, or meters squared, or centimeters squared, or whatever unit of measure we have. So area of a parallelogram is length times width or base times height. The area of a triangle is half the base times height, or half the length times width. Here are a couple of examples of finding the area of triangles. Your base and your height always have to run perpendicular to each other. So on B, you have a right triangle. So it's easy to see your perpendiculars, 1/2 times 6 times 4.5. But A is not a right triangle, so we have to get the perpendicular height. This line here is the slant height, which would not help us. We have to have the perpendicular height. So 1/2 times 8 times 5.2. Base is 8, height is 5.2, half of 8 is 4, 4 times 5.2 is 20.8 here. Base is 6, height is 4.5, half of 6 is 3, 3 times 4.5 is 13.5. And your answer is always squared for area. So here it's square meters, here it is square inches. So here's your formula, 1/2 times base times height, or you could use 0.5 times base times height. Try 2A, find the area of this triangle with a base of 10 and a height of 2. Here's one you could probably do in your head. Half the base, half of 10 is 5, and 5 times 2 is 10. Your area is 10 square centimeters. Here's what that work would look like if you wrote it out. The base is 10, the height is 2, half of 10 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10. The answer is 10 square centimeters, or centimeters squared. Try 2B, find the area of that triangle, all the filled in blue spots. This one is a little more difficult than what we could do in our head. So here I have plugged 5 1/3 in for the base and 3 in for my height. If you have a scientific calculator that does fractions, you can take your calculator and put 1/2 times 5 1/3 times 3 to get your answer. If you don't have a scientific calculator, you can multiply two fractions together on paper, or you can just kind of round. 5 1/3, 1/3 would be 0.3 repeating, so maybe you could say 0.5 times 5.333 times 3, and that would give you the answer. However you get it, you should get about 8 feet, 8 square feet. So here we talked about the fact that a parallelogram is base times height. A triangle is just half of a parallelogram, so a triangle would be half the base times the height. Now let's look at what happens if you take a triangle, which is 1/2 base times height to get the area of this triangle, and you cut off the point and created a second base. Now instead of a base times height, I have two bases and a height. I have created a parallelogram. So let's pretend that my height of this parallelogram is 4, that this top base here is 2 units, and this longest base here is 8 units. Okay, a parallelogram has trapezoid has one set of parallel sides. This line and this line are parallel, and it has 4 sides. Is a quadrilateral with one set of parallel sides. So if a triangle is half the base times the height, and the only difference in a trapezoid and a triangle is I have 2 bases, I just need to account for that. So area of a trapezoid is half the height times the sum of the 2 bases. Same formula as a triangle, except instead of 1 base, I have 2 bases. I have to multiply them together. Now, change the order. Instead of half base times height, I did half height times the sum of the bases, but it doesn't matter. You could put the h over here on this side of the, sorry, you couldn't see that very good. Let me say that again. If a triangle is half the base times the height, then a trapezoid is half the sum of the bases times the height. And I could take this height and put it over here on this side of the parentheses. Does not matter what order you multiply in. But what does matter is you do what's in parentheses first. So on this one, 0.5 times the height times the sum of the bases. It is extremely important I follow order of operations and I do what's in parentheses first. 2 plus 8 is 10. Now I can do the rest. Half of 4 is 2. 2 times 10 is 20. So the area is 20 square units. A triangle is half the base times the height. A trapezoid cuts off the point and creates a second base, so it's half the sum of the bases times the height. Textbooks always write the formula with the height before the bases. 1/2 the height times the sum of the bases. But again, if you did half the sum of the bases times the height, you'll get the same answer. What's important is you follow order of operations and do everything inside the grouping first. Here's an example of a trapezoid. The state of Nevada is shaped like a trapezoid because you have a quadrilateral, 4 sides with one set of parallel sides. So your formula is just like a triangle, except you have 2 bases. Your bases are 206 and 478. your height is 318. So the height runs right here perpendicular to your two bases. Height always runs perpendicular to your bases. No matter which way this trapezoid is turned, height always runs perpendicular. There's my right angle showing it's perpendicular to the two bases. So the two bases we plug in for base 1 and base 2. The height we plug in for height. We have to do what's in parentheses first. 206 plus 478 is 684. Then you can multiply those three together and get your answer. In this case, the answer is 108,756 square miles. Let's try one with some smaller numbers. Let's try number 2. Find the area of that trapezoid number 2. It gave me the height of 3.2. It gave me the bases of 5.8 and 3. Add your bases together, you get 8.8. I could go ahead and say half of 3.2 is 1.6. And then multiply those together and get your answer, which is 14.08 square meters. Try number 3. Find the area of a trapezoid that has a height of 12.4 centimeters and bases of 10.5 centimeters and 7 centimeters. Okay, finding the area of the trapezoid, my height, it said, was 12.4 centimeters. My bases were 10.5 centimeters and 7 centimeters. Now I can do the next step in my head. Do what's in the grouping. 7 plus 10.5 is 17.5. And half of 12.4, well, half of 12 is 6, and half of 4 is 2, so 6.2. So that we can do in our head. But now we need a calculator to multiply these two numbers together. And our answer is the area is 108.5 square centimeters, or centimeters squared. Here are the 3 area formulas in this video. Area of a parallelogram or rectangle is base times height, or you could say length times width. Area of a triangle is half the base times height. And area of a trapezoid is half the height times the sum of the bases. We're going to do one more of each. Those are the formulas you will need. Here are 14, 15, 16. The last 3 we'll do. Find the area of a parallelogram with a height of 9, base of 5, of a trapezoid with a height of 6, bases of 4 and 7, and of a triangle with a base of 12, height of 4.4. Find the area of each of these. Here is number 14. Number 14 was a parallelogram, so it's just base times height, 5 times 9. Your area is 45 square millimeters. Number 15 is a trapezoid. Your formula was half the height times the sum of the bases. Given time for number 15. Number 15 gave us the height of 6 and the bases of 4 and 7. Half the height is 3. The sum of the bases is 11. 3 times 11 is 33 square centimeters. The area of the trapezoid is 33 square centimeters. Number 16, finding the area of a triangle with a base of 12 and a height of 4.4. Area of a triangle is half the base times height. It told us the base was 12 and the height was 4.4. Half of 12 is 6, and 6 times 4.4 gives us an area of 26.4 square feet. So once again, here is our formula sheet for a parallelogram. Base times height, area of a triangle, half the base times height, and area of a trapezoid, half the sum of the bases times the height. Thank you.